March 4, 2025, President Donald Trump's administration has taken a bold step in global trade by implementing significant tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. These tariffs represent a marked escalation in the ongoing trade tensions between the U.S. and these major trading partners, potentially reshaping international trade dynamics in the coming years. The tariffs are substantial: a 25% levy on all Mexican imports, a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, with a 10% surcharge specifically targeting Canadian energy products, and an increase in tariffs on Chinese goods from 10% to 20%. These aggressive measures have drawn sharp criticism and retaliatory actions from the affected countries. President Trump's justification. President Trump has defended these tariffs by citing concerns over national security and illegal activities, particularly the continued flow of narcotics into the United States from Mexico and Canada. He emphasized that the influx of drugs is still occurring at unacceptably high levels and argued that the tariffs are essential to protect American citizens and jobs. Trump has also used this policy to address what he claims is unfair trade that disadvantages American industries. Canada's retaliatory measures. In response, Canada has announced its own set of retaliatory tariffs targeting U.S. goods. The Canadian government has implemented a 25% tariff on $100 billion worth of American products. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement on social media, stating that the retaliation would begin immediately with $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, with the remaining $125 billion worth of products to follow in 21 days. Trudeau has sharply criticized President Trump's move, accusing him of attempting to destabilize Canada's economy to make it easier for the U.S. to annex the country. Trudeau also dismissed Trump's justification for the tariffs, specifically the claim that fentanyl is being trafficked from Canada to the U.S., calling it completely bogus. Additionally, he fact-checked Trump's statement that U.S. banks cannot operate in Canada, asserting that they are allowed and have been for years. The Prime Minister further warned that the tariffs would have serious consequences for American families, stating that both American consumers and President Trump himself would soon feel the economic effects of these measures. Ontario's countermeasures. Ontario, the most populous province in Canada, has already introduced its own retaliatory steps. Premier Doug Ford announced that Ontario would impose a 25% export tax on electricity sent to 1.5 million homes across Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. Ford indicated that should Trump introduce additional tariffs in April, Ontario would halt all electricity exports to the U.S. entirely, redirecting power from nuclear reactors to support local manufacturing needs. Ford also made it clear that Ontario was prepared to stockpile nickel, a key mineral often supplied to the U.S. for use in defense industries. Canada provides about 50% of the nickel that the United States relies on, and Ford said this was a critical resource that would no longer be sent to American markets. Furthermore, Ford confirmed that Ontario would cancel a $100 million contract with Starlink, the satellite internet company owned by Elon Musk. A month earlier, Ford had threatened to revoke the deal, but allowed it to proceed after Trump temporarily softened his tariff stance. With the tariffs now back in place, the Starlink contract was terminated. Ford called Trump's actions chaotic and expressed frustration over the damage these policies are doing to the economies of both countries. Nova Scotia's response. Nova Scotia's Premier, Tim Houston, also took to social media to strongly denounce President Trump's tariffs, describing him as a short-sighted man wielding power recklessly. Houston accused Trump of ignoring the long-term damage these tariffs would cause to both Canadian and American citizens. He stated that the U.S. president's actions have generated uncertainty and chaos for businesses, workers, and families on both sides of the border. In response to the tariffs, Houston announced several immediate actions. Effective immediately, Nova Scotia would no longer allow American businesses to bid on provincial government contracts. Additionally, the province began exploring options to cancel existing contracts with U.S. companies. Toll fees for American commercial vehicles crossing the Cobequid Pass were also increased, doubling the cost of tolls for U.S. trucks. Moreover, the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation was directed to remove all American-made alcoholic products from its store shelves, a measure that has been effective in past trade disputes. Houston highlighted that the province's 2025-2026 budget included a contingency fund, designed specifically to mitigate the economic impact of the U.S. tariffs. A broader strategy: strengthening domestic and global trade. Beyond these immediate actions, Houston emphasized Nova Scotia's commitment to reducing its reliance on American markets. He called for stronger interprovincial cooperation, urging all Canadian provinces and territories to pass legislation that eliminates internal trade barriers, thus ensuring a more robust and unified Canadian market. Houston also suggested that Canada must diversify its international trade relationships, strengthening partnerships with countries beyond the U.S. Premier Houston made it clear that Nova Scotia would not stand idly by in the face of U.S. trade aggression. Instead, the province would work proactively to safeguard its economy and reduce its vulnerability to unpredictable U.S. trade policies. The calls for more interprovincial collaboration and diversification were intended to solidify Canada's trade infrastructure in preparation for an increasingly complex global trade environment. This growing trade conflict between the U.S. and Canada is set to have far-reaching consequences. As both countries engage in retaliatory measures, the effects will likely ripple across industries and markets worldwide. With ongoing tensions and no clear resolution in sight, the future of North American trade hangs in the balance, and both sides are bracing for more economic fallout as the situation develops. Nova Scotia is actively working on a comprehensive trade action plan designed to help local businesses expand their global reach, boost competitiveness, and attract much-needed investment. Premier Houston underscored the province's strong commitment to developing its natural resources, issuing a call for new projects aimed at reinforcing economic resilience. Despite the ongoing tensions, Houston expressed his disappointment that the trade conflict had escalated to this point, stating, "We worked hard to avoid a repeat of Trump's tariffs. We know that tariffs harm people and businesses on both sides of the border. Unfortunately, some people need to touch the hot stove to learn." While acknowledging that Nova Scotia cannot control Trump's actions, he emphasized that the province will take control of how it responds. He thanked Nova Scotians who have already stepped up, prioritizing local and Canadian businesses, opting for domestic travel over trips to the United States, and supporting Canadian athletes and teams. Houston reinforced that these individual choices matter and help foster solidarity. He stressed the importance of standing together as a province and a nation, adding that collective action will help Nova Scotia navigate this challenge. Houston reaffirmed the province's continued collaboration with the federal government, especially in countering tariffs imposed by the United States. "We are a government of action, and we continue to stand with you," Houston assured Nova Scotians, emphasizing that his administration remains committed to protecting the interests of hardworking families during these uncertain times. As the trade dispute between Canada and the United States intensifies, Nova Scotia's resolute stance signals that the province is prepared to take bold steps to safeguard its economy and workforce. Meanwhile, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has issued a strong condemnation on social media in response to President Donald Trump's new tariffs on Canadian imports. Smith called these tariffs an unjustifiable economic attack on both Canadians and Albertans. She accused the U.S. president of violating the trade agreement he had signed during his first term in office, and warned that these tariffs would harm not only Canada but also Americans, resulting in rising costs for essential goods like fuel, food, housing, and vehicles. Smith pointed out that the policies would also lead to the potential loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs across both nations, calling the move foolish and a failure in every regard. "This is not how it should be between two of the world's strongest trading allies," Smith stated, emphasizing Alberta's preference for cooperation over conflict. Alberta, she noted, would rather focus on building mutually beneficial trade agreements than get caught in a damaging tariff war. Smith also expressed full support for the federal government's response, as announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier in the day. She disclosed that her cabinet would meet within the next 24 hours to finalize Alberta's own retaliatory measures, with a public announcement expected tomorrow. In the face of ongoing economic uncertainty, Smith called for national unity and swift action, urging all provinces and territories to dismantle internal trade barriers and prioritize fast-tracking key resource projects, including pipelines, LNG facilities, and critical minerals development. Smith further emphasized the need for Alberta to expand its global market reach, strengthening ties with Europe, Asia, and the Americas across energy, agriculture, and manufacturing sectors. "There is no time to waste on any of these initiatives," she declared, promising to provide further details in the coming days. As tensions rise, Alberta's response signals a strong and proactive approach in defending its economic interests, while pushing for greater national self-reliance. In Manitoba, Premier Wab Kinew wasted no time in responding to U.S. tariffs, announcing that American alcohol will be removed from all Manitoba liquor marts, effective immediately. In a brief but decisive social media post, Kinew declared, "We are taking U.S. alcohol off the shelves in Manitoba liquor marts," signaling his government's firm stance against the U.S. tariffs. Premier Andrew Furey of Newfoundland and Labrador also issued a firm response, condemning the economic harm inflicted by President Trump's tariffs. Furey made it clear that, while the U.S. remains Newfoundland and Labrador's largest trading partner, the province would not passively accept the damage being done to this critical relationship. In direct retaliation, the province announced several measures, removing U.S. products from the Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corporation shelves immediately, halting procurement of U.S. goods and services where possible, and focusing on expanding market opportunities for the province's industries, especially in Europe and other international markets. Fury emphasized the importance of continued collaboration with local industries, communities, and labor organizations to mitigate the fallout from the trade dispute. A new roundtable on Canada-U.S. trade relations will be established to strategize further responses. Fury concluded by calling for a united national front, stating, "Our identity, our values, and our sovereignty will give us the strength to stand against any bully. We remain the true north, strong and free." Meanwhile, the U.S. stock market has taken a significant hit in response to President Trump's 25% tariffs, wiping out about $3.6 trillion in market value and erasing all gains made since his re-election. Investors who initially believed Trump would avoid any actions that might disrupt Wall Street are now witnessing one of the worst sell-offs in recent years. The tariffs, which have targeted imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, have led to steep declines in U.S. financial markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped nearly 800 points, or 1.9%, reversing gains made since the election. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ Composite also fell by about 2%, signaling investor concerns about the economic fallout from the escalating trade conflict. Industries with high exposure to international trade, such as automakers, home builders, and materials sectors, have experienced notable stock declines. Companies like General Motors and Ford are projected to face significant financial losses, with estimates of up to $14 billion and $6 billion respectively. The home building sector is also bracing for higher costs due to tariffs on raw materials and finished products from neighboring countries. In response to the growing economic uncertainty, investors have turned to safer assets, leading to increased demand for U.S. Treasury bonds. This flight to safety has caused bond yields to drop, indicating fears of a potential economic slowdown rather than inflationary pressures. The tariffs have sparked retaliatory actions from other nations, with Canada imposing 25% tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. imports, including consumer goods. Mexico is also expected to announce its own set of tariffs targeting U.S. products. These developments have contributed to market volatility, with the VIX, or Volatility Index, reaching its highest level since December. Economists warn that the ongoing trade tensions could result in higher consumer prices and potential inflation, affecting various sectors of the U.S. economy. The shift away from long-standing free trade policies introduces significant uncertainty into global markets, increasing the potential for prolonged economic disruption. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. We sincerely appreciate you joining us today. If our content resonated with you or sparked inspiration, please consider supporting us by liking the video and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support is invaluable. You can watch another video from our channel, which is now on the screen.